Welcome to the Transformations Podcast. Here, guests and I will share our transformative experiences and will explore how to find excellence in life. Hey, Russ Smith, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity.
4th of July.
Yes.
So 2023. And what were the kanji on your coffee mug?
Oh, yes. A friend of mine a while back, he had opened a cafe press shop. It says Okinawa goju-ryu.
Oh, so that's sweet.
Yeah, I've been holding on to this cup for a while. It's my favorite. So
yeah, it looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
And to your left is your library, I see.
Yes. On this wall, I've got 6 rows of books. On this, I've got 6 rows, but they're half size. And then I've got in the other room. So kind of like yours. Of course, yours is more mature than mine is, but I'm working on it.
More mature. Well, this is like a third of it. And then there's more over here and then around the corner and in the basement, another 800 or 900. So,
right. And that's after you've downsized.
That's after I downsized. Yeah. But you and I are very similar in our chasing of martial arts knowledge, right? Like there wasn't any internet or YouTube when we were starting. And we're just like, we got to get every book on all the styles that we like.
That's right.
And some on the styles we don't like, but we want to learn some of their secrets, or, they had a form that looked cool or a teacher was tough. So we had to, had to get it up. What year did you start training?
80. Well, it depends on what kind of training you're talking about. So when I was really young, about 12 years old, a family friend, I don't even remember his name. I was so young and not paying attention at the time, taught me some real basics, like a couple blocks, a kick and a punch, and a few drills. I don't know what kind of karate it was. It was some kind of karate, but it wasn't until 87 that I started training very seriously. And that was when I was in the Philippines and I had a chance to start training goju-ryu and then some eskrima as well in the Philippines. Yeah.
That's crazy. So your first introduction to the arts for real.
Yeah.
And you're like 13.
Yeah.
And you're visiting your grandpa who's living over there.
Yep.
And you're like, your classmates like, I studied judo at the YMCA. What'd you do over the summer? I went to the Philippines to learn arnis and karate.
That's right.
How cool was that?
It was super cool. I was always very, very lucky with my grandfather because a lot of the summers between ages of about 5 to 15, most of those summers I had a chance to go. He wanted to spend time with me, but he always lived in California or somewhere. And it wasn't until I was, about 13, as you mentioned, that he moved to the Philippines to work. So, I got to spend a lot of summers with my grandfather. He was like a father to me and great opportunity. Yeah, really got me started.
I looked up to my grandfather as well. He gave me my first pocket knife. And then my mom didn't want me to have it. I think I was in 5th grade. And she said, if he ever cuts himself, I'm taking it. And one time a friend grabbed it from my hand while I had a thing open and it cut my thumb and she took it. And that was the end of it. It's like, I wish I'd still had it.
Oh man. If you can envision it, maybe we can find it online.
Yeah.
I had a custom ring made by my mother when I was young. It was a dragon holding an onyx and it looks really cool. Wow. It's holding this stone. And it got stolen out of my car one day. Oh. And so I was heartbroken because it meant a lot to me. It was a gift from my mom and it was real custom. And I thought it was basically irreplaceable. So I went searching online, dragon ring holding whatever, and tried to use my Google foo. Eventually I found somebody who had the same casting that jeweler had used. Wow. And I asked him to make me a replacement. So I've got a replacement for the one that was stolen. So maybe if you can envision that knife, maybe you can find it.
I have the vision, and I think it was a buck. Buck was the brand, but it wasn't Swiss Army, But I still have my Swiss Army knife from when I was 13 and a couple other ones, and all my original balisongs when I was a delinquent. Taking the train from school into Philly, going on Market Street to Funko Mart and the Sound of Market, where they would sell me shuriken stars and balisongs under 18 at 13 and 14. Yes. Because Asian World was here and they wouldn't sell them to me. So I just go into the other stores to get them.
And certainly we would never do anything bad as young boys with shuriken or anything. No.
Like throw them into the fridge. I don't know how
dumb stuff like throw them at passing cars or just like all the dumb things I did as a kid. Of course, I'm just glad that was pre-internet.
Tabby boots and ninja outfits.
Oh, so if I
I'm
hadn't
out of
told you
you
this
right
before, I'll tell you this for the first time. My parents still give me so much crap about this
now.
because at that age, of course, it was, so this would have been early 80s. Stephen Hayes and the
Oh yeah.
rising ninja stuff was really huge
Uh-huh.
back then. And so I wanted all that stuff. So eventually I saved up enough money and I got myself the climbing claws,
Yes, yes, yes.
the
I
hands
had
and
them.
the feet.
I
Well, my
didn't have
parents still complain about how I turned their garden hose into a soaker hose because I walked on it, um, and stuck a bunch of holes in it. They were horrible for climbing. You couldn't climb
You
anything with
couldn't
those
climb
things.
any. They were too small, and the
Yeah,
only thing they could go in was drywall. I heard.
I heard
Yeah, you know,
allegedly.
really hard to run with those little spikes on your foot, too, when the cops are coming and the
So
neighbors.
it was so ridiculous. But I couldn't afford to buy the books, but I would go anywhere there was magazines and read the magazines, of course. And
Yeah,
back in the day, like you said, I would go to Books a Million or Barnes and Noble or
right.
whatever the older ones were, and in the malls when malls were indoors still
Yep.
down in Florida. Those are indoor malls are almost gone. They're almost all
Yeah,
outdoor, which it's kind of strange. But yeah, I would go read practically every book. Doesn't matter what it was. It was the old Wing Chun books and the old,
yeah.
Dragon Pole and the
No,
Bruce
William
Tegner
Stone,
books,
but
which were
Tegner, Bruce
horrible. But
Tegner.
yeah, yeah. But the
Yeah, yeah.
old the Robert Smith books, and
Yep, yep.
God, one of which is still one of my favorite books. Look at me just reaching over off the shelf,
Oh,
right?
Chinese boxing. Yeah,
One of my absolute
such
favorite
a good
books.
book. I
So
have
good.
the paperback and the hardcover.
Oh wow,
And
that's
it's
cool.
like I just got, you got to get them both, even though it's the same.
Yeah,
It's a good book. And you
it
didn't,
is.
of course, your favorite catalog of all times is
Oh, Dolan Sports,
Poland
right?
Sports. Yeah,
So I still have this stack of, I'm a kind of a pack rat. I have this stack of old papers and pamphlets from everything I've seen and done over almost 40 years now. And
yeah,
Dolan Sports, all these old magazines. You said Asian World. I remember when Asian World had pages of Shuriken,
yes, yes,
right? And
yeah.
just like, how cool some of these old things were. And I always window shopped. As a kid, I was real poor, so I couldn't get a whole lot. But man, and then you get older and then you realize, wow, I don't really want to train that, or I don't have time, or nobody's available. And you kind of give up on some of those and you focus on other things that need your time. But
I had taken an Asian World, they're in Philadelphia. I'm in Philadelphia. I had taken an Asian World catalog in 1984, and I corrected the descriptions in the books, right? And some where they only had one or two lines, I made them longer following the pattern that they used and all this. And I took it to them in the store, and I'm like, here, I fixed up your catalog. So they hired me. I was 15. And even though you had to be 16 to work there, they hired me because they thought I knew enough
that's
and I
so
knew a
cool.
lot. So I worked there for
Yes.
like, I guess, 2 summers and holidays and weekends and stuff in between. And
That's
it
so
was so
cool.
cool because they got 20% off everything.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what
And you
uniform
had a
color,
job.
what nunchucks, and, what book.
Yeah.
It was like, and I'm in Chinatown. It was like so awesome,
I bet you're
to,
just like, here, take my paycheck. I need some stars and a ninja sword and a wooden
well, and I
dummy.
thought like in the basement they had monkey kung fu or some kind of ninjutsu, but there was no secret training in the basement of
Oh
Asian
no.
World or the fourth floor. That was kind of empty. It was
Oh
like stock and a lunchroom for people. And I was like, there's got to be kung fu in there. It's a martial arts store. And it's not as cool as it was.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
back then, they had samurai armor, the full thing. They had naginata. They had Shaolin spears. They had the
Wow.
kung fu boots. They had guandaos. They had all
Yeah,
this stuff. And you go in now, and it's just like uniform, safety kicks, toothpick bows,
yeah.
plastic sai. And it's like, what happened to
XMA
all?
and Taekwondo and McDojo stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like what happened. And they don't really sell books and DVDs and stuff anymore. It's like there's a couple sitting there, and it's just like, what happened?
Do you think we just haven't had a good kung fu movie in a while? Do you think that's a piece
Yeah,
of it?
we've had some, but I think YouTube kind of ruined the magic of it all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I know YouTube killed martial art book sales for
Mm-hmm.
sure, because before it's like, oh my God, William Chung's putting out the Bill G book. That's the third form, and they were
It doesn't go
advertising,
out the door. What?
yeah, and they had a yellow cover, and I like ordered it like 3 months before it came out. Then it came, and I like had to like pretend I was sick to go to work that day so I could look at the book,
That's
and it's
awesome.
all this exciting stuff. Like if you wanted to see or learn about some form or some training or some style, you had to get it from books. And then when YouTube came out, it's like, oh, I can see, the third Wing Chun form and the fifth Lung Ying form and,
From 12 lineages.
24 hours a day for free. Everybody's putting it out for free, but the book wasn't free, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so people are like, oh, well, that style's not as good as I thought. Why get the book? Because it looks crappy when they move. Why do I want to buy the new Filipino martial arts book for techniques when I can see them doing it in real time in 3D, right? I mean,
right.
It's just like,
yep.
So the only people buying books today are me and you.
That's true.
And,
is true.
I like looking at the old pictures, right?
Yeah,
like, especially of like the Kung Fu Wounds and the karate dojos, right? When you look at those books, like Hokama Sensei's book, and there was a book on Weichi-ryu.
Oh yeah. I'm just going to grab the Weichi-ryu books, right?
And it's
Alan Dollar's book.
Alan Dollar's book. What a great book.
Fantastic pictures in here.
Fantastic pictures.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is what the old guys look like training, and they have stones and bamboo that's all crooked, and there's no air conditioner in the window,
right?
And there's like 8 guys sweating in the classroom. Like that's what in the Kung Fu movies, the training sequences is what I wanted to see. Now, I don't care about the plot. You just want to see the guys learning the secret technique.
That's right. The montage.
Yeah, the training montage, and and finding secret teachers, and you'd see a guy in the back of a restaurant hit somebody with something. You're like, the books, the quality of the teachings is lower. It is. People are just snagging stuff off of YouTube. It's crazy.
And to yes and what you just said, of course, and now we've got these books that you can buy on, if you're still looking for books, right? You go on Amazon, you buy a book. That book, one, probably has no first stage research in it.
Right.
It's probably all rehashed of everything else. Yeah. Two, it might be so bad that book is a compilation of Wikipedia articles.
Oh, we've seen a ton of those.
Right? And so, wow, the quality is low.
It's low, and people don't know how to do the layout and take pictures, edit. It's and that's not just in martial arts, that's books across the board. And that's why companies are having a hard time. The market got very filled up with crap. With crap titles. So
when you lower the barrier to entry to one of these things, like how to write a book or how to publish what you say, like if a blog becomes easy, then everybody has a voice. The voices of the experts are drowned out amidst the chaos of the lay people who still have opinions.
Everyone has opinions, and it started with the chat groups, the forums.
Oh yeah, forums,
right? And then it went into blogs, and then it went into Facebook, right? And YouTube, you put something up, and there's people just trashing you, and you're like, first of all, who are you? You don't know, you may not know anything, right? Like, we don't know who you are. We don't know what your background is. We don't know if you know anything, and why are you being so rude? Like, back in the day, we would trash talk people, but it would be just to ourselves.
If we meet somebody new, we might gong sao with them. We might be like, all right, do you have anything worthwhile to say? Like, do you know anything at all? Let's just make sure we're on a playing field here where we can have a conversation.
Right. Otherwise,
Yeah. The internet takes all that away, right? Who's that? Mike Tyson said, a lot of people have got comfortable because they can't get punched in the mouth or something like that. I forget how he said it.
When I was going out, I'm sure when you were out training, because there was no Google and no Facebook and no YouTube, you actually had to find good teachers, and like you'd look in the magazines. That's like the first thing, like who's in there. And then they'd have a directory in the back. And I remember every issue of whatever magazine, looking in the directory is who's got a school where that looks interesting, And
in my stack of those papers, like I mentioned earlier, I've got sheets torn out of the phone books from the hotels I've been at over the last 30 years, right? Like that's one way we used to do it too, right? Like go visit somebody. Well, my wife jokes now that she's like, well, there's countries she wants to go to, but we only travel to countries where there's martial arts that I enjoy training. Right. So she's like, I got to find a dojo in Spain so we can go visit Spain. Right.
Right.
She's quite self-sufficient and she's a wonderful traveler too. So
you started off with karate in the Philippines and Arnis.
And Arnis, yeah.
Do you know who do you remember your teachers or what style or
The
what?
Arnis, I don't know the provenance of the Arnis because
Right.
it was from my classmates in the Goju class.
Okay.
So the goju-ryu instructor, his name was Ian McKenzie. He was an Australian who worked at the business that my grandfather was
Oh,
helping
in
to
the
manage
Philippines.
in the Philippines. He was an
Oh, that's
Australian,
cool.
and he trained Goju Kai in Australia under Yamaguchi's lineage.
Yamaguchi.
And then at some point he had trained under one of the Yamaguchi sons, maybe even the father. But yeah, I trained under him, and then trained some Eskrima. I learned Sinawali and a handful of things, a wing block, a few other things, almost nothing, when I was there. And I don't know the lineage.
Yeah.
Fast forward so many years, I became one of those people that you've talked about before, which is kind of like a seminar learner, right? I learned a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I never had a full understanding of a style or a complete curriculum. So I was struggling a lot. And obviously, those who follow me at all know that like I just stopped doing everything else I did Eskrima wise when I met you, and you showed me. I mean, first lesson you showed me the value, the utility, the methodology that footwork entailed in the art, and just blew my mind because in so much of the other training I had done, we were like switching feet, doing these female triangles, but with no particular reason or rationale
Right.
for why to do it. So I never understood any of that. And you really shined quite a light on that for me. So at that point I was like, yeah, I honestly, I've never done this with anything else. I've never said, all right, I'm never doing that again. I now have this. I've always said, well, okay, cool. Now that's new. That's good. Let's add
Right.
that.
Right.
But I was like, no, there's when you come across a good methodology, a great teacher, good historicity behind it, and all the good utility and the training wheels that you need, I don't think there's a good reason to go elsewhere personally.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Highly
So
recommend.
now you started in Goju. Then when you came back from the summer, did you find a Goju school specifically, or like how did you continue training at 13? I mean,
Yeah.
you're not driving. All you can
Yeah.
do is moonwalk somewhere.
Yeah. I did, strangely enough, in my small town in Florida, I did find another goju-ryu school. So I ended up having some challenges with them. They were not specifically honest about what they learned and what they were teaching, that kind of stuff. So I struggled there for a while until I eventually found that in Orlando, a good hour and a half away from me, was a legit Okinawan goju-ryu school. And so kind of in my mid to late teens, I started training over there. And that was my serious basis for goju-ryu, was in the IUGKF under a teacher by the name of Tony Madamba. He was a
Hmm.
seventh dan under Higo Inamorio.
Oh,
And
wow.
so a lot of my goju-ryu I got fixed and touched up and learned all the kata up to, but not including Super Empe there. And later, when I left IUGKF, I started training under Sensei Kimo Wall, and I learned Super Empe and then some of the Taguchi lineage
Right.
additional material because Taguchi added a lot to the system.
When you say Taguchi, you mean the yellow book or the orange book?
The orange book, Taguchi
Yeah.
Seikichi. Yep.
That's how I know the instructor, by what book they published. There it is.
100%.
The orange book.
So
Yeah.
what's also wonderful about this book
Yeah.
is I bought this book from my Sigong 20 years before he would become my Sigong.
No kidding.
So I bought this book at Squadron Shop
Veteran shop in Green
in
Hills.
87 in Green Hills. I also bought a PAL video
Yeah.
of Higo Inamorio doing a bunch of kata. And I bought a rattan staff that I still have in the Gwoon. The airlines lost the staff on the way back from the Philippines, but then they found it in the cargo hold and shipped it to me. So yeah.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. So you were in the Philippines as a young kid. You
Yep.
met my teacher who has
Yeah.
this shop, who had the shop, Squadron Shop. You bought some stuff, and 20 years later, he's like your grandmaster, you know?
Yeah.
And you
Amazing.
could have, if he had shown you like how to throw one punch, you'd have been his student first. And then I'd have been like, well,
That's crazy. It's a small world. I mean, I never thought I would meet you, right? I mean, there's so many people. I've been super lucky in my life to meet people that I only thought I would ever read about in books. And so, it's been a real pleasure to have
Yeah.
met you and become a friend and a student of yours. So, it's just been wonderful. And it's been about 18 years. I just checked
Yeah.
some notes before I jumped on the call. But yeah,
Oh,
been
geez,
close to.
18 years. So that's like, so my son's 24. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah. Your kids were
you know,
knee high when when
I
I
guess
first.
Brooke was just born. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. We first met. I flew down to Fort Myers, Florida to visit my parents, and you drove a couple hours, 3, 4 hours
3-4 hours to come
to
down
get
visit.
there to meet up.
Yeah.
And then when we met, I was all intimidated because like you knew all these cool pole forms and
That's
techniques.
crazy.
And I was
That's
like,
crazy.
maybe I'm not good enough to teach Russ Smith. He's going to
Oh,
be
no,
famous
no.
one day.
No,
And
no,
here we
no.
are. You're super famous. That's why I'm interviewing you.
Oh, yeah. I'm famous among like 10 people, which is fun.
But
So
all 10, right?
all 10.
All 10. Not like a fraction of the people.
Now I'm one of the 10.
Oh, you're one of the 10.
So it's really like 9.
9. Yeah. And you're my brother. I don't see you as a student or as a friend. I see you as a brother. I love you like
brother.
a brother. Yeah.
Thank you, brother.
So you're in Goju, but now you branched out. You did some other arnis, right? Didn't you study with Fred Lazo for a while?
I took a few classes from Fred Lazo. He was in the area. Yeah, got a few classes. Just didn't really speak to me. Just wasn't convenient. There was a lot of things. Just wasn't exciting. I trained under or with some old friends from high school who trained. A guy that I trained with in high school. He became quite an instructor under Dan Inosanto.
Wow.
So I did that. I trained a little bit under Ray Dianaldo for a while. I had some challenges just trying to figure out how to. It was I would just say from my perspective, one of the challenges I had was I went to classes, but there was not a clear structure.
Right.
To what we were attempting to do. There was different things every week, but I couldn't understand the through line. So there's some challenges there. I think that was Pikiti Tersha.
And he's got a big following,
Yeah. He's super talented. I take
real
that from
athletic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think you and I, even though we have different kinds of professions, I've told you this before, but I'll say it again just for everybody else's perspective is I work with a lot of engineers and highly analytical people who are probably on the spectrum, and they're programmers and engineers of different kinds. And the way they approach their work, is very segmented, methodical, and these kinds of things. And I've always thought of you because of your writing as a more creative type, but you are as deeply analytical as any programmer I've ever met. So a lot of what appeals to me about how you teach is how well thought out and structured it is, because even though I don't feel like I can do your Eskrima system any justice physically yet, and I don't have any students to really continue kind of motivating me in that way, I love to learn more when I get a chance to get up there. But I feel like I understand your system because you're so clear about what your system teaches. I have to continue to do the work. Right. I know what the work is. I know what the work will get me. You've made that abundantly clear, but it's on me to do the rest of the work, right?
Yeah.
So I like that clarity.
Oh, thank you. One of the things growing up, I lived in a fantasy world all the time.
Sure.
Life's rough at home. Things are rough at school. Mm-hmm. The girls aren't the cool kids aren't hanging out with you, and the girls aren't dating you.
Sure. Yeah.
So you lose yourself in a fantasy world. A lot of guys read comics, play video games, whatever. Yeah. Like you, I just was like martial art, freakazoid.
Yeah.
And I would just watch the kung fu movies, love the training scenes. Like, what are they training? How are they getting those skills? Yeah. But the masters of the train, a lot of people watch the training scene from in Five Venoms, we see each of the guys training or in North Shaolin versus South Shaolin. Lo Mang's doing push-ups with
eggs in his hand,
eggs under his thumbs, and he's got and people are looking at them training, right? And I was looking at the teacher saying, what is he bringing to this? Because he's training this guy to get the skill that he has, right? So what skill does the teacher has, and how is he imparting the training method? So I was like, oh, that training method is super cool. I'm going to play with rubber bands and straps and this and that and the other thing. But what is the teacher trying to convey?
Right.
And do I have to give him a bowl of rice with char siu on top as a gift, to get him to teach me, right?
Right.
And a lot of those teachers in those movies, and we know, they're just fiction, right? But they were martial artists, they were calligraphers or scholars, or they owned an antique store, or they were herbalists or bone centers, acupuncturists, right? So there's this world of culture of skills, and I wanted to get all those skills.
Yeah.
And then with the physical skills, Remy Presas, the modernity's late grandmaster, said, the best way to learn your art is to teach the art, right? So he would give people a basic instructor certificate after a weekend seminar, but it was outside of his belt ranking system, right? So the basic and advanced certificates were not part of the white to black belt to ninth degree. It was a seminar thing.
Seminar ranking.
A seminar ranking, so people could go out and teach their friends so that they could learn and practice the art. Because the more you explain it and show it and the questions come, you got to figure it out. Even if it's wrong, you'll fix it when you see the master next time. One thing that you've done that after we met and I was showing you the Eskrima paradigm, you were like, well, how do you do that in your goju? And I'm like, that's my, that's my teacher's thing. And I don't want to mess with that. It's like, I was afraid to kind of move, I only had one goju teacher, Alex Ko, but in Filipino arts, I had, 30 teachers or something, 7 main teachers, and then a whole bunch of people showed me things. But goju is very, 5 ancestor fists is very precious to me. Because I always felt Alex Ko was precious to me.
Yes.
He was too young to be my father, right? So, we were only like 20 years or 15 years apart. So, but he was like a big brother, Sifu, best friend, because we joke like we joke, right?
Yeah.
And he would always just teach me stuff and say, if you were my student, I couldn't teach you this.
For sure.
And Alex just dumped all his knowledge at me. Which was tremendous. And,
super lucky.
But you took the idea into your goju. Okay, this is where I'm going. And then you were able to and then your white crane and your bak mei. I mean, people, some people know, some don't. You have quite a number of kung fu systems, even though a lot of people know you as a goju teacher, and a kobudo teacher. Right. But you took the principles from Eskrima that I was doing, and then you just completely put that into a training paradigm on your own. And actually Tambuli Media was lucky to publish the first edition of your book, Principle Driven, martial arts training.
Well, I'll just interrupt if you don't mind. I mean, I was incredibly lucky because you helped me take a germ of an idea and a handful of crappy student and teacher manuals that I had in play for years trying to figure out what I wanted to do along, as you said. I mean, you've been a huge influence on my understanding of how to teach and how to think about strategic and tactical principles and concepts and keywords and all those elements that I kind of roll up under the word principle in the book. But I mean, that book would not have been anything without your input, really, because you helped me craft a message to help reach people in a place where people are very defensive, and people will react poorly to hearing things that are negative about things they hold dearly, right? And so you really helped me come at that from a lot of different perspectives that helped me give a message that people wanted and needed to hear, I think. I mean, the feedback has been super good. Your coaching on how to write and what to write and how to do that. I mean, just, that book would not have been really, 10% of what it is without your help. So your help in editing and layout and just concepts and feedback has all been just super helpful.
Oh, thank you.
No, really.
But maybe not that much, but thanks.
No, seriously, because I know how much of a challenge it is now as I'm trying to do some things and not bother you with questions, but take what you've given me before. So, it's very difficult, and I don't want to be one of those guys contributing garbage to the market.
Right.
So I'm trying to be careful, but at the same time is short. So I sometimes would rather get something out, even if it's not perfect, and then fix it in a second edition or get feedback or that kind of stuff.
Right. Your goju training has gone on and on. You've been to Okinawa how many times? Three
Three
times.
times. Three times.
And you trained in Madayoshi Kobudo there, and also
Mario Shikobudo.
goju-ryu.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I trained Mario Shikobudo, my primary teacher. That well, I trained Mario Shikobudo under Kimo Sensei because
Okay.
Kimo Wall was one of the students in the Mario Shikobudo back in the '60s. I
Oh
think it was
wow.
when he was stationed there. So he got a very early version of Mario Shikobudo, even before some of the curriculum changes that most of us are working under today.
Okay.
So for instance, um, back in Kimo Sensei's day, when you would learn the system, you wouldn't start with a bunch of basics that you would practice and then eventually learn the kata. You would learn the basics that match that kata. You would practice those for a while, and then they would stitch it together for you, and you would have the kata.
Oh, right.
So it wasn't like it was all extracted and put up front. It was just in time practice of each technique as you were
Got
learning
it.
each kata. And then another unique paradigm of Masayoshi Kobudo, kind of unique, is that Masayoshi Sensei would craft with would it would be kind of a project with each major student to help them develop their kumite, their kumiwaza. So
Huh.
their applied use of each weapon, it would be something Masayoshi Sensei would work with each student, like Gakia Sensei. So they almost all the major students walked away with different sets of fighting drills.
Right, right. That's
Uh,
so. So that's something that I mean, you and I have spoken about this. Um, when I think about arts like karate arts from
mm-hmm.
Japan,
Yeah.
historically, I would think about them as traditional
Mm-hmm.
artifacts of a time and place.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm hearing from you right now is that, in fact, they're still living arts. Like, and this is where you and I have had the discussions about, what does it mean to be traditional? What is a tradition, right?
Yeah.
And I know so many teachers, I would say kung fu teachers that I'm very close with, who always say, I try to go back and find the original form. Who had the original form? It's got to be a living system.
Yeah.
If it's not, it becomes antiquated, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, this is a huge and hugely important topic in my mind, because you gave a great example just 5 minutes ago talking about how the difference between Eskrima and how you were so innovative and free to rework the curriculum for the benefit of your students. But you felt differently about that in the Five Ancestors. You didn't feel like you could adjust or change it because it was important to maintain its integrity for certain reasons, right? And I think we as humans, and I think you can see this throughout history, we have a dual nature, a very yin yang concept that plays out in our relationships with other people, and that is this kind of shift between I'm going to use political terms, but I don't mean this politically, but it happens to line up as well. Conservative versus progressive mindsets. Like by nature, traditional martial arts are a conservative activity. The conservation of the material is a stated goal of most of these relationships and processes, right? So we're trying to conserve this material from the past, but at the same time, they originally a lot of these people were warriors. They weren't teachers, right? So one of the challenges I've found is I think we've had a lot of really amazing practitioners in the past teach stuff, but you mentioned a saying I hear a lot, when I have a love-hate relationship with this saying, you learn by teaching. You should just teach. Kimo Sensei told me, you've been doing it how long? You should be teaching. You should go teach, right? While it is obvious and true that you learn from teaching, it's also potentially unfair to a student who comes to learn from someone who's not actually a teacher.
Well, you've got to be honest and just say, hey, I just picked up some stuff at this seminar with such and such, and you want to work on it with me. And in order to work on it with me, I have to actually show you, not teach you, right?
Yeah.
But then you're going to ask questions, know, and then but you've got to keep revising, or you're just going to be horrible at it,
Exactly. Yeah, I love that, and I forget what some people call that. It's not like it's like a study group concept or whatever,
right?
Which
Like
I think is
wonderful,
group,
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I had the same challenge, right? Like, what is my place in tradition? What is the tradition? What is a tradition? How do we cope with the fact that we say we're goju, but you do things differently than me, and I know so and so changed something, and he added something, and how do you? am I going to be like aloof and say, well, it's wrong if it's new and it's only good if it's between 1820 and 1870? And, it's like, there's all these things. Some people are overly innovative and they change things very quickly, and it's hard to,
like far right, far left, right? Outliers are bad, I think, in anything.
Exactly.
Right? We got to hover around the middle somewhere. Cooking, same thing.
Love that you use the cooking analogy, because it brings up the story of grandma's pot roast, right?
Right.
Which is a wonderful thing. And if anybody who's listening hasn't heard it before, I'll give you the short version. Grandma or mother and daughter are cooking one day. Mother's teaching daughter how to cook a pot roast. And mom brings out the pot roast and cuts the end off, both ends off, and wraps it up, gets it ready, puts it in the pan. And the daughter's like, Mom, why do you cut the ends off? And mom's like, I don't know. You're going to have to ask your grandma. So next weekend when you visit her, go ask her, right? So next weekend rolls around. The daughter goes to grandma. She says, like, Grandma, like, I learned how to make your pot roast. It's awesome. But I have a question. Why do you cut the ends off? And grandma's like, my pan was this big.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and some things are simple and obvious, right? Like in Gocho, in 5 Ancestor boxing, you can go to different lineages and the footwork is different. And you say, well, what happened? Well, we came out of Hong Kong and we didn't have space to take the full step. So
right. Or we had a big one of the things that Don Draeger noticed when he was in Indonesia, right, with the Silat guys, and he wrote a couple of books on Silat. And one of the stories I got from, I think it was either Mike Scoss or Hunter Armstrong, his his guys, was that when they asked the Silat guys, why is your stance so wide and low? How they do this whatever. And they said, because in our village where we train, it's always muddy.
Right.
So we have to dig in and be strong footed.
Doing it. Matayoshi Kobudo, you see this a lot. The guys will go out and do a demonstration and they use what we would call huabe in 5 Ancestors. They do replacement stepping instead of stepping forward. Well, you got the huge stage, but back at the dojo, you don't have space.
And you can't switch that up once it's in your muscle memory.
Yeah.
Somebody say recently on a podcast, and he said somebody asked him about, but this is the traditional way, and it was something to do with food. Sure. And he said, you need to be inspired by tradition, but not held back by it.
It took me a long time to get to the place, and now I would say this just a little bit differently, because I think that's good, but I'll do you one. I'll try to do you one better.
Flip it up.
I like the idea that tradition is the launching point, not the limitation.
There it is. Yeah.
Right? Because it really should launch you forward into the world and give you...
Yeah, let it inspire you.
Yeah.
But don't let it hold you back. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the ways that was super helpful for me to make amends between tradition, between conservation and innovation... one of the things, it was kind of led by an example that I saw Kimo Sensei do. And he said, well, I learned this move in Seisan from this teacher and this teacher, but then this other teacher who was also a student of Miyagi did it this other way. And he's like, so in this one kata, I do it this way to honor these teachers. In the other kata, I do it this way to honor that teacher and keep his teachings alive. And I was like, oh, that's a nice compromise, right? So he kind of selected from what he had been taught. But to further that, as I had developed a better understanding that teaching skills were overlay, separate from fighting, separate from running. I think of overlay skills as some good examples besides teaching. So not only teaching, but like business, to run a business. You can be a great executor of anything, but if you try to run a business and don't respect that as a skill, you will fail, right? Leadership is a whole set of skills that are overlay skills on top of business or on top of other things. So once I started to understand that teaching was a set of skills I didn't have, I tried to supplement myself with that. But what my compromise is, and I'm very happy with this still after all this time, is the techniques, the forms, the terminology, that's the payload. That is the tradition. And what I'm going to say is, to make it work for me and my students, is the teaching methodology is not the tradition, and it's subject to change and advancement.
Right.
That's my compromise. Some people will totally disagree, who are very strict conservationists. They would say, no, only use these teaching methods. These are the traditional ones. But like you, rubber bands, yes. If my teacher had rubber bands, he would have used them. I believe it.
Right,
So
right.
yeah,
In the Philippines, it's interesting. The culture of Filipino martial arts is a culture of change. What was there before the Spanish came? We don't really know. Tribal stuff, most likely. What was there during the 344 years of Spanish occupation, where the Spanish were, the arts changed. And the nature of battlefield art versus civilian self-defense system, right? That's the main thing. Why nobody's out here training with bows and arrows, blowguns, and spears and shield, although they like to pose with it. None of that has anything to do with the modern FMA that we see. And then the Spanish-American War, America ruled the Philippines. Japan came in after World War II, Aikido, Judo, Karate. Arnie Sador started wearing karate uniforms, lining up in lines, counting out numbers. All this stuff kept evolving in the Filipino arts. And now with YouTube, there's karambit and ground grappling and MMA in the Filipino arts. If you create a new teaching method, is that the tradition? And I agree with you. Teaching method is not tradition. What's tradition is the nuts and bolts of the art, right? The form, the techniques, the footwork.
And the theory.
One of the things you've done is really pull that forward, into your work. Do you think that your training in Bap Mei and in Bai He has helped you understand the methods or movements or techniques of Goju better? Or do you think that the Goju formatting helped you learn those other styles better?
Yeah, I would tell you, I feel like everything has made everything better.
Yeah.
Honestly, because Goju, I've been happy that even though we wouldn't call it that, the Jing training methodology in goju-ryu has transferred very well into my Southern style martial arts of Kung Fu. And theory and training methodologies of Kung Fu have helped improve the teaching methodologies and the application concepts for goju-ryu. It's interesting having one foot in each world. There's a few goju kata that look very Kung Fu. So I'm with the Kung Fu guys, they're like, show me karate. And I just feel like they're expecting to see some Shotokan, and I whip out this thing and they're like, oh, that's Kung Fu. Kind of. But then you show a karate guy, Samchen Sipley, like when you first demonstrated to me, it was like, oh, that looks very karate. Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But, karate guys, I'm going to speak in broad general terms. So I'll overdo the generalization here. There's a lot of karate that doesn't have the theoretical underpinnings that a lot of the Kung Fu has. And there's a lot of Kung Fu that doesn't train nearly as hard as karate guys.
Oh, for sure.
Right. So I see people on both sides of the fence looking over the fence going, oh, the grass is kind of green over there.
I always wondered, I wrote an essay in high school. I wish I could find it. I wrote an essay about how in arts like Taekwondo, this is from my experience because I was studying Taekwondo and Kempo, right? Ed Parker's Kempo, that the techniques in the forms didn't match the techniques when we sparred. Right? Like
that frustrated me.
I couldn't do the inside-outside block. I couldn't do the upper block and reverse punch. It was too slow. It didn't work. There were too many kicks. You couldn't just go, You had to be like, smack them away, parry them, dodge, hit.
It's all kickboxing techniques. Yeah.
Yeah, but how come we're training all these forms and then when we spar, we're not actually using those techniques?
That was the fundamental thing that bothered me too. Yeah.
Go ahead. And then I contrasted that in the essay that in Western martial sports, boxing, wrestling, fencing, you're always training to win in the competition. You're hitting the bag and the other bag and sparring and doing the focus mitt drills or doing drills with your foils that are exactly what you need to apply your art. But in martial arts, you're doing all this stuff that's different. Where did it lose its application? And I remember some teachers said, well, it's just too deadly to do sparring. Well, then why spar? Right? Let's just put on some gear and be like JKD was back in the day. And you've got catchers, plastic shin guards on your legs and all kinds of cool stuff. So you could hit each other. Right? Yeah. And so this is part of what I appreciate about you a lot is that you're looking for the through line, the principles. You wrote a book about it. You're teaching bridging classes, all kinds of classes online at the burinkan.com. And it's about applying those principles, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is about like, cause I went into traditional martial arts, not boxing or something like that, because I had this belief that some of this stuff that we read about and saw in movies and stuff was true, and that we could get like the wisdom of the ancestors who fought and used this stuff, and they could put it in our hands and we could use it. And it was for self-defense, not for winning a boxing match. But what I ultimately found was this challenge that you just pointed out, which was you got your Kihon and your kata, and your kumite is something completely disconnected. And I never could understand that. And I feel like that's really what was missing, was the bridge between, and this was part of my learning when I did what Kimo Sensei said, which was you should just start teaching. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to grab my paper. I'm going to write up the lessons. And then I go, okay, super clear on what basic is. I think I know what advanced is. Been training 20 years. I think I know what advanced is. And I was kind of right. But like the middle part, what is that? No. How do you build from the basic to the advanced? When you watch the real masters, the Weishibas, the Kanos, these, like the real masters, they're not usually doing the same stuff you're seeing people train.
Right.
They're doing stuff that's in the they're all mode 1s and mode 2s in integrated eskrima parlance. The point being, you're doing defense and counterattack in the same beat, right? However you're doing it. And so how do you build up to that from a karate paradigm? It took me a long while to go out and research how other people did it and how it's done in Kung Fu and how it's talked about in the theory. And it took a while for me to really understand how to build up, to restructure the teaching of karate to make it so that you could go in a very smooth progression from basic through intermediate to advanced, and really live up to the paradigm of this Japanese saying called Shuhari, which I think for so many people in Japanese martial arts turns out to be lip service, because in Japanese martial arts, like, you better do beginner stuff and focus on it. There you go. You've got your Shuhari plaque.
I got awesome. The Shuhari plaque. For That's those who are listening on Spotify or Audible and you can't see it, go to youtube.com and check it out, because his mother, I think, made a Shuhari calligraphy plaque, and I have it right here on my bookshelf. So I'm going to cover it with my head again. But there you go. And what does Shuhari mean?
Yeah, Shuhari, if you take it very literal, Shu is to protect, Ha is to smash. Coincidentally, Ha, in Gocho, if you said Shu, it would mean your defensive hand techniques. Ha would be Pua, which is our smashing technique.
Yeah.
And Ri is to split or separate.
Wow.
Right? So split. So It really is meant to describe the stages of learning. First, you do what you're told without alteration. Then you kind of customize it to your own preferences. And lastly, you separate from the tradition and you really are your own person. But I would say in most Japanese martial arts, that Ha and Ri stage is meant to be basically when you're dead. Like there's no progress. I'm speaking broadly. Obviously, there are places where this is done really well, but I think in my experience, it's just you're kept in the beginner first year of karate doing that for 30, 40, 50 years without being well transitioned to the other phases. And, to steal another page from your book and your teachings and your influence, like you say, I'd like to teach somebody, twice as much in half the time, right? I may have misquoted you there, but I want to teach other people. I want my students to not have to go through all the cross training, all the frustration, all the struggle and failure. And, I would love to teach somebody what I know in a quarter of the time. Like that would be just a real success on my part.
So I'm going to give props to a Wing Chun Sifu named Pete Pagil. And Pete in 1992, I trained with him a bit in Moyat's Wing Chun. And he said two things to me back then that were, for me, were profound in 1992. He said, I was complaining to him. I said, not complaining, we were talking. And I was saying how, I get so tired because I'm teaching, I was teaching Serrata Eskrima, and the students just, they're not remembering what I'm telling them, and they're not practicing, and I feel like I'm wasting my time, and they're getting this, 6 guys in a class, and da 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 da, and he said,
I know where you're going with this. I love it.
Yeah, and he said, why do you care? I said, what do you mean, why do I care? Because I'm their teacher, and I want them to be the best, and I want to teach them the best of everything, and they have to develop right, but I'm giving them my all, and I feel like they're taking advantage. And he said, no. He said, look, their kung fu is not your kung fu. So don't put your kung fu on their kung fu. Something like that, he said. And basically, it's like some people are just there to watch. Some are there to have a good time. Some are there because they want to pretend like they're Bruce Lee or the Terminator, or they just like the social aspect, or they want to be part of a club, or it's a pastime. Like, I played soccer, I played tennis, with my dad just to whack around the ball. But I never studied tennis. I never watched videos on tennis. I never analyzed tennis, and it's like, their kung fu or their eskrima is not my eskrima.
Right.
But then I realized for me at that point that I only want to spend my time to give my eskrima to people who want my eskrima.
That's right.
Not people who are there for other reasons, right?
Yeah, so not the casual. You're not interested in spending time with casual.
I get bored and I just end up like ending the classes,
Yeah.
How do you get good? That's the training method. And that has to keep moving forward. Look at sports science. People were doing basketball back in the day, and you look even like Dr. J, and then you look now, and it's like they're so much better. The wrestlers are so much better. The track guys are running so much faster, right? The javelin is going further. Yeah. And you
because
look
the teaching methods have increased.
The teaching methods, the sports science, the coaching methods have increased. There's a science behind a lot of that, which martial arts are out of the loop on and should get in the loop on,
That's a good point. And that's kind of what I've ended up migrating towards. A book that my good friend and Goju instructor, Sensei Marcus Davila, pointed me to was called Understanding by Design.
Yes.
And it was super good for me to help, as it's an introductory college textbook for teachers, right? And it was just super helpful for me to get that like reminder that this is a field of study. There are multiple frameworks for learning.
Right.
They're some of them are complementary, some of them are not. But it's important to think. There's psychology, sociology. There's group dynamics. There's sports physiology. There's a lot of dynamics involved in what we do, and we have a lot to try to be good at if we're going to be instructors. It's very difficult. Mm-hmm. You mentioned those challenges of teaching those casual people, and that's something I've gone through so many phases, many not helpful. They slowed me down in my martial arts, right? Like, I'm in the search for the original kata, or there's only one true method of this. I got to go find the Holy Grail, right? So one of those things in the way that I've been teaching lately is to try to set myself up to spend more time with those people who are going to float to the top and be the people that I really invest more time in, because I can't invest a lot of time in all the casual people who I love, who are wonderful people who get something out of the training, but a lot of them are casual, right? They're having fun, they're enjoying it, but they're not going to carry on the whole tradition. They might carry on a piece of it. So in recording a lot of classes and developing more curriculum material. So instead of writing like books with a lot of theory, right, like that first one was, like my goal now is to develop stuff that's very student oriented, so that it's much more specific, so that I can say, hey, look, like if you can, like, this is to help you if you take crappy notes, right? This is a reminder of things you need to be aware of and pay attention to. And it's a reminder of what our family calls things and how we do things, right? Nice. And then, this other stuff, the bridging stuff is like, well, regardless of the style, how can you introduce some skills in a progressive way? It's very curriculum oriented. Right. And so what I want to do is be able to go, all right, anybody who's going to get a black belt or a black sash or a first level in anything I do needs at least, if I was teaching judo people or MMA or Krav Maga, I would teach the same stuff, because it's just like, it's good foundational handwork. Right.
Right.
And
Right.
so that becomes a new litmus test for me. If you can do that, it's already been figured out what that is. You can go do it. If you're going to do it, it's going to prove you're going to do the work and you have some skill and you've invested.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know I can take you to the next level. But I can't teach beginner class. I can't teach white belts my whole life. I'll go crazy. I'll get frustrated. I'll lose my love of teaching. And I do love teaching.
Yeah.
So,
well, you really love teaching. I mean,
I do. I do.
When we talk about it, you get so excited about how you overcame a student's block somehow. You know, they were blocking on learning something and they couldn't get a coordination, or they couldn't remember the thing, or they couldn't apply the something. And like, you figuring it out and creating mini drills for them that are not in the curriculum, but are just for them to get the hang of. And
I do love it.
Yeah.
I see it as since I'm still in love with teaching, I see it as an interesting challenge to solve. Kind of like, if you have work to do, try to make a game out of it, right?
Yeah.
Give your buddy crap, make a bet, whatever you got to do to turn work into fun. I find it interesting to have challenging students, because it really stretches my teaching abilities and makes me learn and tests my patience and other things. But knowing that there's a limit to that, I have to think forward and go, okay, like, I get I'd railed against the idea that you have indoor students and a bunch of people you just don't really teach, but you teach this few, and these guys, they get crap, but you decide 4 people are going to get it.
Yeah.
I don't think about it like that, but I kind of get the general concept. The general concept is, you're going to have 100 people and one of them's going to turn out to be a solid person who takes it on as a teacher under you. And it takes a lot of time to find that one person.
Yeah.
And you can't be distracted by the other 99.
Right.
If they know what to do, if you're really clear about what the goals are. That's another thing about teaching Americans that I think I understand the McDojo concept a little bit more, in the sense that when people come to us, what they don't want to hear is, oh, you want to learn Goju? Okay, well, it's going to take the rest of your life.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what? Like, I was going to go to college and get a marketing degree, and that was only going to be 4 years or 6 or 8 at the most. Like, that was no lifetime thing. What are you talking about? Right? So people want to know what it is. And so if you can put a box around it, that's why I appreciate you helping me, craft this 1 year starting program for 5 ancestors, because I want to help keep the art alive. And I wanted to work on trying to get more practice teaching. And I wanted to give people a core that we could then build on from there. And I do think I'm very excited. We just completed the 52nd lesson of 52 lessons in that first core level. And I'm so happy to be involved, and happy you brought me in and helped me. It taught me these things. I really love 5 ancestor boxing. It's an immense system. It's so valuable. It's so comprehensive. It can be a lifetime of learning, but it can also be something, if you really want to come in and just learn the first, core element and just work on that for a long time, just do that too, right?
In the show notes for those listening or watching will be links. Sifu Russ Smith's 52 lesson program for 5 ancestor boxing will be available on Tambuli Media and on his Burinkan site, to go ahead and join that program class by class, or how you want to move up through him. Yeah. So that's really a terrific thing. Like, you missed the year, but all 52 lessons are there in all the styles of the 5 ancestor. I think the problem with why it's dying out is because it became a forms practice. In 2013, you went to the Philippines with me. We went to see Sifu Alex, and we were working on the translation of the Gocho Bible that you and he translated co-jointly. I mean, a lot of that work was done ahead of time by you while he was working on other chapters. We were training. He had a student there named Mark, and he went to teach him, I think, the 6th form or something. And he said, Sifu, why have to learn more forms? What's the point? And I was like, what's the point of just learning the forms if you're not learning how to apply them?
That's right. That's right.
right.
Yeah.
Because the traditional kung fu in the Philippines, which used to be very robust, there was a lot of
Yes.
styles in schools, is
Yeah.
now very small because the JKD clubs, the MMA clubs, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu clubs opened up,
Yeah.
and the students go and learn how to do stuff in real time right away.
Right away.
And it's
Yep.
like, wow, isn't that
Yeah.
cool?
And the wonderful thing is that's just a change of teaching methodology, right?
Right,
So
right,
with your help and guidance, I was able to take and front load application and
right.
application theory and attribute development. And I mean, again, Five Ancestors is so rich. It feels like an anthology of all this growth and evolution of Fujian style martial arts,
Yeah.
starting with Taizu as one of the older styles, but also being very straightforward and hard. And then that being softened up a little bit by the introduction of Lohan, which made it more mobile. And then bringing in Damo so we could introduce the internal
Mm-hmm.
elements to the style. And then continuing to evolve to soften up more with Monkey and include like the upper, the middle, and the lower basin. And then lastly, well, for us, we culminate with the White Crane
Right.
to continue to soften and bring the elements of a good yin yang balance. Some groups have gone even further, and maybe Crane's not even soft enough, and they've introduced the
Right.
concept of the mysterious woman, right? But
Right.
I think it's a really neat look at the historical evolution of the style, because I feel like it's Five Ancestor boxing is so incredibly rich. And just by not being a forms only teaching methodology, people can get a tremendous amount from it. There's great
Mm-hmm.
exercise, there's fantastic application theory, some of which derives from earlier sources like Yu Da Yao and Chi Ji Guan, which is very
Mm-hmm.
cool.
Yeah.
So there's wonderful history there, a lot of writings. So I love it. I'm very happy. We taught very few forms in that year compared to kind of some of the older ways, but we've also reintroduced the older concept, which is at some point you get to specialize in one of the ancestors if that's what
Mm-hmm.
you want to do, right?
Right.
So we've
Right.
reintroduced that into the teaching
I like that a
methodology.
lot. It's like, what's your biophysiological preference of movement? Or not even
Yes.
a preference, biophysiological makeup of your body,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yeah.
do you want to be doing the jumps and the cut bays and the
Right.
scissors legs takedowns? Well,
Right.
my hips can't take that anymore,
Right. Right.
so I can't. But like the crane and the monkey stuff, grab, block, pull, finger thrust, like yeah, and then the taizu
Yeah.
on top of that, and then I
Yeah.
got to heal up with some of the what they call the dot chun, right, or the
Right.
damo style, and
Yeah.
the dajin fa, the ijin jing, the
Right.
breathing
Right.
exercises. Like okay,
Yeah. And so I love this model because it gives us a common core that
mm-hmm.
we all come up through. We can all train together on the common, and then we can all have some specialties and preferences. And I think that's a
Right.
wonderful thing because it speaks to how we are as people. We like to be a part of a group, to have a tribe to refer to and to grow with, but we also want to be recognized for our own individuality. And I think
Right.
it's important as a teacher to represent or to recognize that we're kind of all like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We want to be part of something bigger than us,
Yeah.
you know.
Definitely.
And so people who are interested in five ancestor boxing, or what we call Gocho-kun or Wuzu-chuan, Unjokun, you can visit gochokun.com, gurinkan.com, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tumbulimedia.com. All these links will be in the show notes underneath
Yeah.
on the video. We published several books through Tamboli Media. Russ Smith has gone on and written 2 more amazing books and redone his work on the second edition of his principle-driven training. Those I will put up on the screen, and links for them in Amazon will be below. And he did one on Gocho, one on Taizu or Taicho, and he's working on some others. And they're just really fantastic because you and I have been collecting all the articles from China and books and going crazy that for so much content over there that we don't have over here. Yeah. And then you kind of just like said, hey, let's just pull all these theories and principles and application things together and put them into these 2 little manuals, which are basically stripped of all the blah, 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 and just right to the point. They're really awesome. I mean,
Exactly.
everyone should get them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy. It is hyper condensed, right? They're almost too condensed, right? If
Yeah.
there's going to be criticism, but they are specifically. I try to make it clear that for the Five Ancestor book, it is a student manual. Only my students will get the best use out of it, but other
Yeah.
people definitely have told me they really enjoy it. It's really some good information. And then I really keep coming back and rereading this one. I just think this is so interesting. This
What's that one
type
called for the
so
people who are
this
listening?
is yeah. So it's called Overview of Fujian Taizu Boxing,
Okay.
and so one of the books that you gave me access to from your library had a series of annotated information from other
Yeah.
teachers, and so with the original long poem about Taizu boxing, the annotation helped me better understand some certain specific phrases that are
Nice.
Tuanzhou based sayings and those kinds of things. And so I added commentary to that based on our understanding of five ancestor boxing and those theories. So just a lot of fun. It's good. I mean, this is secret kung fu manual shit right here.
Oh
So
yeah,
this is
absolutely.
like, these are the books that got stolen that caused all those clan fights and all those great movies.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyhow, for me, that's a ton of fun.
Having these in English is like amazing. Because
Yeah.
all we had, not all, but we had Alex Coe's books, which had
Yes.
a lot of great stuff in there. But
Yes.
so much came out since that we were able to get hold of since the
Yeah.
80s. And then he published, we translated the Gocho Bible
Yeah.
in English and Chinese together. So that was like a ton more. But then we found a
Yeah.
whole much ton more,
Yeah.
that became available to pull from. So this is like
Yeah.
super awesome. And I'm really
Yeah.
thrilled that you can do those translations.
I do
It's
my best. I'm still learning.
you have classes at the Burinkan Dojo.
Yeah, in Dade City, Florida. Yeah, so pretty much only on Saturday mornings I teach classes. So I teach karate, kobudo, and kung fu, five ancestors specifically. I only
Right.
teach the Hakka kung fu privately, but I
Yeah.
don't teach a whole lot of that. So I'm mostly focused on five ancestor boxing. Very excited to have some students coming up in that
Nice.
and becoming more well versed in that. Yeah, so I just wrapped up that first core for the five ancestor boxing. So anybody interested in either just looking or training on your own time and then getting periodic, online or in person private lessons to touch up, we have the five ancestor boxing, and then I'm doing the same for Mariyoshi Kobudo. We're on class 20 so far. We're covering in 1 year all the curriculum up to Shodan, up to black
Wow.
belt. So we will cover all the fundamental techniques of Bo, Sai, and Tonfa, as well as Kumiwaza. So that's paired techniques for Bo, Sai, and Tonfa. And then two kata, Nicho Sai, which means two Sai kata, and then Shushi no Kon, which is the first Bo kata. Yeah, so if you haven't started yet, you can certainly start.
Yeah.
If you ever catch up and you want to join live, that's fine. If not, take your time, do it on your own and that kind of
I
thing.
love it.
But certainly if you're ever in Florida, I just had some students come in from Canada yesterday, and they were in Orlando. So they came over for some privates, and that was a blast. So wonderful people.
So they can find you on Facebook. They can find you on YouTube. They can find you on the web. And I'll have all those links in the description underneath to make it easy.
So my school name is called the Burinkan in Japanese. So it's Burinkan. And that's a Japanese way of saying Wulin Guan, which would be the Chinese. And Wulin is the martial forest. So there's a saying, Wulin Yijia, which means all of the martial artists are one family.
Right.
And since I cross train, and many people who come train here train in other styles, and we don't really care about styles. We just love training together. That just felt like the right name for this school. So burinkan.org, Burinkan on Facebook or YouTube, you can find us.
Oh, I was going to say one more thing about Mariyoshi Kobudo. When I lived in Japan, I went to the Budokan for several demonstrations.
Yeah.
And they had one day, Gakia Sensei was there with some students doing Mariyoshi Kobudo, and it just blew me away. The Shorinji Kempo was cool. I really liked seeing that because it's like karate with jujitsu together. The Mariyoshi Kobudo, when they came out and did their demo, the whole place got silent. It was like these guys move so hard and fast, Gakia Sensei and the students, and it looked like they were trying to kill each other with the bow against the this and the sai and the tonfas and the big shields. And it was so impressive that it stayed with me. And I learned
all these years
through you, from you. But I really need to get back on and go through the curriculum, because it's like one of those bucket list things I just want to do, because I'm so very impressed with that style and just the level of the practitioner.
Gakia Sensei blew me away when I saw him, and I just was, I feel so blessed to have had the opportunity to learn from him. And I just really feel lucky, because when he taught me, there was almost not a time where he was teaching me where he wasn't swinging a stick at me.
Right.
And it made everything matter.
Wow.
Like I just watched so many people do kobudo, and I can tell nobody swung a stick at them yet.
Yeah.
And it just becomes real obvious. So I feel super lucky. And I'm so happy to share the kobudo as closely as I really don't change the teaching methodology much at all for kobudo. I don't feel there's a need. I don't, I'm not trying to make kobudo people who are going to go out and use nunchaku on the street. Hopefully, none of us ever need it. It's a wonderful cultural artifact. It's wonderful for the body. It's a great adjunct to the karate. But there's wonderful skills. It's a ton of fun. But I don't change it much. I try to teach it in honor of Gakia Sensei and Kimo Sensei. It means a lot to me. They spent their time with me, and they didn't ask much in return. And
well, I really appreciate you giving us this time on your 4th of July, where I know you got to be cooking out tonight.
Yeah, will do.
Again, thank you so much, Russ Smith. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I know our viewers are going to just love all you had to say today.
Well, I'm really excited that you are doing this podcast. I'm excited. I've been watching a few of the ones you've started already. I've got a few more to catch up on. I'm just so happy to see you out engaging the community, because you have so much to give. You have just this tremendous, I'm just continuously in awe of your experiences, what you've sought out, how much you've done, how much you traveled, how many stories you were there for. When I'm thinking about things, you're like, 20 years before that, this led up to that thing you're talking about. And I'm just always amazed. So thank you so much. I really am glad you're doing what you're doing.
Thanks, brother. Talk to you soon.
Brother. All right.
Have
take
a
care,
great
brother.
weekend.
All right. Bye.